Okay, so y'all, today is the 16th, and by Friday, we are planning on finishing our unit on photosynthesis and cell respiration. So you won't have any brand new assignments this week, but we are going to support you the next couple of days on some of our past assignments. And we do want you to study and know that Friday, we're planning on having our test over photosynthesis. So today, we're going to focus on the Gizmo assignment that's been assigned. I know some of you have had issues signing in. If that's the case, please email me. I'll give you your login code. If you don't have a login code, you can register, which is on that site. I'll include the links in the assignment, and then you guys can go ahead and register on Gizmo and use this as an example. But watching the video also might help you complete the assignment today, since I'm going to go ahead and do it. And if that helps, that's fine. I'm not going to go ahead and put every answer in there, but you can still see what happens, and you can use that to answer if this is something that helps you if you're having issues with logging in. So Gizmo assignment right here, it's if you go to photosynthesis in the classwork tab, you'll have the Gizmo photosynthesis cell energy cycle. And so you'll open up this document, looks like this, and then you'll have a Gizmo that looks like here when you launch it. So you can log in, and then you'll have assigned gizmos. The cell energy cycle gizmo is the one that we are looking at, and you can launch it, and this is what you'll see. So I'm actually going to reset this so you can see what we did, and then we're going to go in here. The beginning of these, you don't need the gizmo to answer. So you're just answering, what does a plant need to survive and grow? What does an animal need to survive and grow? And how do plants and animals depend on each other? So you're going to talk about things like sunlight, water, CO2, oxygen, food, which and maybe soil if you need to, but kind of the cycling of nutrients and energy, right? How do they work together, right? And then the warm up here, it gives you a picture of all these, and you're just saying, what's the chemical formula for oxygen? When it says chemical formula, that's these symbols here. And that's what's different between sixth grade and maybe seventh grade, is now we've learned about elements. So we're going to talk about glucose, and we're going to know that glucose is C6H12O6. That's what glucose looks like as a compound. That's something that we expect you to be able to do, and that's one of the things that's different about maybe sixth grade or elementary, where you said oxygen or CO2 or oxygen or carbon dioxide. We're now looking at it like O2, CO2, glucose, H2O. We have some chemical compounds in there. Glucose is a simple sugar. What's the chemical formula for glucose? And so, I mean, literally it's right here. You're going to type that out. Don't worry about the little numbers. If it's really bothering you, you can make the font smaller on the number, and that will look like this. But we're just looking for you to be able to recognize which formula goes with which wording, because you probably know the wording, but you may not know the formula from previous years. And that's what's kind of different. We're moving towards chemical compositions. Activity A is going to focus on photosynthesis, and so we clicked reset just to make sure that it's set up right. First thing we're going to do is predict, so we're going to say of the molecules shown in the molecules pane, what do you think are the reactants? What do you think are the products? And so that means out of this list, which are the reactants and which are the products? So you're going to try to determine that before you even do the activity. Right, so you're going to go in here, click reactants. Maybe you think it's oxygen and CO2, and maybe you think the products are water and glucose. But whatever you think they are, you're going to put those in here first. If you already know them, that's great. Okay, if this is correct, that's fine. It's kind of like a hypothesis, right? We're predicting, right? Then we're going to explore, which is similar to like the experiment, which we've done in the past in labs. So we're going to drag the molecules and see which molecules stay in here, and those are the ones that are going to react. The molecules that go into this is a chloroplast, right? And so if I go oxygen, you can tell that it won't go in there, and that's because plants don't use oxygen for photosynthesis. They use carbon dioxide. So By the way, you're going to want to have this clicked here where it says show input output formula, because that's going to help us with our formula. It's not going to be exactly what we're looking for, but it is going to help. And then I'm going to say water, right? And then I don't have the outputs yet, so there's something I have to do. And you'll notice up here, add light. So when I add light, now I get outputs, what they're calling outputs. But these are my reactants. These are my products, the outputs. So reactants are inputs and products are outputs, if you want to think about it that way. But we call them reactants and products because that is what is used in science. Inputs and outputs are a way to understand what goes in, what comes out. It's a way to connect what we've learned in previous science classes to what we're learning now. So that kind of gives us a formula here. And now we've done that, we can go here and we can kind of process that. What are the reactants? Right, well, oxygen and glucose are not. These are outputs. So reactants are what's inside. CO2, H2O. And then this formula they give you says that sunlight is causing the reaction, which is kind of true, but we actually include it as part of our reactants. So we want you to preferably list that, right? So you're going to list those reactants here, okay? 3, you're going to observe. So for them, it says add lights, and you can say, what are the outputs of photosynthesis? So this is basically what is our products, reactants, products, okay? And then summarize, that's where we're taking our reactants and our products, and we're putting it into something that makes sense in science. And this is a very big part of your test. Do you understand the chemical equation for photosynthesis? So we've set that up for you. It doesn't matter the order here, but you're going to type in each of our reactants and what are our products that go here. This is where they combine. That's why we say summarize, because they create this reaction, right? Inputs and outputs, or what we call reactants and products, create an equation, a chemical equation, which tells us the relationship between some of these things, right? Were you right? Yes or no? You'll probably be right, just so you know, right? And then the relationship here, you need to understand that there's a relationship here, and that's going to come up at the very end of our document. Okay, so next we're going to go to cellular respiration. So we are learning about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So right here, we'll click on respiration, and we don't have to reset because it's brand new, right? And what you'll find is this is really the same thing. What do you think we're predicting? What do you think the reactants are? What do you think the products are? Just like we did before. It's just a new experiment. So, right now, I don't know if you noticed, but there's no add light here. So I wouldn't maybe put light in your prediction. Okay. Then we're going to explore just like we did before, which means we're going to drag these, which is kind of like doing our experiment. Right. You'll notice if I drag CO2, it doesn't go in there. If I drag H2O, it doesn't go in there. If I drag oxygen, it goes in there. If I drag glucose, it doesn't go in there. It goes out here. So this is somewhat of biology, but the glucose actually breaks down before it goes through cell respiration in the mitochondria. And that's just an extra thing. It's cool. It's good to know, but you don't have to know it. We're looking at the overall. And so we're still looking at inputs and outputs, or what we call reactants and products. And we're going to click next here, and it's going to show what happens to that. So there's actually a little bit of energy that's just simply produced by splitting that glucose. If you think about it, glucose is a really big molecule, so it splits into smaller molecules so that it can be broken down more in cell respiration and create energy. Okay, so cool process, but not necessarily something that you have to know for your test. What you do need to understand is this stuff down here. What goes in, what comes out. These are our reactants, and they produce products. So the one thing that we're going to click again is next. And it shows that those pyruvates, which is really glucose, go in there. And then I'm going to click next, and it shows what happens. All that energy is made as this process happens called cell respiration that breaks these molecules down. And what it produces as a waste is CO2 and H2O. So the energy from the bonds goes into our body and we use it. And the molecules that are left over are released and we breathe those out or sweat those out or pee those out, right? CO2 and H2O. So we now have an equation down here. We can finish up our output here. So 4 and 5 and 6 are talking about this process called glycolysis. Glyco means glucose or sugar, and lysis means to split. So this is just a process where they split sugar before cellular respiration happens. And the ATP, we know this from our notes, is the molecule for energy. So you'll go through 4, 5, and 6, and that's what we just did, the next buttons. And all you're doing is saying what you saw happen. Put it in your own words. Doesn't have to be crazy, just a simple sentence. I'm not looking for a paragraph there. And then we're going to get down to this similar thing we've seen before, right? We're summarizing. So out of these, you'll see that those products and reactants, but we're summarizing. We're making our equation. So in this one, we have this, make this, and this. And instead of sunlight, because we don't make sunlight, we make energy. We call that ATP. So when you go to put energy in here, you're going to type ATP. And that's what will be on your test. That's what we want you to put. That's the type of energy that's produced by our bodies when we go through cellular respiration. And it's also produced by plants when they go through cellular respiration. Because plants, although they do photosynthesis, also go through cellular respiration. That's important to know. Okay, and then were you correct? Say what you want to say. And then activity C is this relationship that we've talked about. So the cycle, how do these relate to each other? So first thing, like before you're going to form a hypothesis, you've probably seen this before. This is probably more like something you've seen, right? You have photosynthesis, respiration. Here we go. And then you're going to predict, how do you think photosynthesis related to cellular respiration? Just simply tell me, how do they relate? And you have some evidence from our previous experiments in those chemical equations. So if you want to use that as part of your hypothesis, you can. Predict, look at the red arrows and think about photosynthesis and the respiration process. Each red arrow connects a set of reactants to the products of the reaction. Which molecules would you expect to find at the top of the diagram? So when we click here, what molecules do you expect to be here? What's going from photosynthesis to respiration? And then what's at the bottom, right? So just like we did before, you're going to predict first, and then you're going to drag, you're going to explore, do the experiment, and put them where they belong. So which substances are photosynthesis? Type those here. What products are outputs of photosynthesis? So what did it make? What? And then respiration. And this is kind of a summary of what you should have already known, but this is showing it in a big scale. Right? So photosynthesis is going to produce oxygen and glucose, right? Because that's what the plants do, is they make food and they release oxygen. And then respiration is going to make CO2 and H2O for plants. So plants take in H2O and CO2 and sunlight. They make food and release oxygen. Humans and other animals and plants themselves use that oxygen and that food to make energy, which goes into the body. So the energy is in the plant or animal, and then they release CO2 and H2O. So that's our cycle right here. Okay, and you'll see that here. Number 4, compare. So this is where you take this data and you make a sentence. Compare what's the same, what's similar, what's different. Think and discuss how they depend on each other, which is the big picture, right? And this is leading us into ecosystems, which is how plants and animals depend on each other beyond just this process. So this is just one process, one way they depend on each other. But we're going to get more into that, and this is how we build that. So hopefully, after seeing this video, you can actually do your assignment, whether you have access to the Gizmo or not. If you still need access, you can email me, If you got access, that's great. But I expect this assignment to be done by the end of the week. And if you don't do it by the end of the week, you're not getting the learning that comes from it that's going to prepare you for your test. So things like the chemical equation are exactly on your test. They are on your test. Things like reactants and products, they are on your test. So it comes straight from this assignment and is a part of what we're asking you to be able to tell us at the end of the week with our unit. So good luck. I hope this video helps. If you need to pause, you could obviously use this video to do the whole assignment. That's fine. I didn't put answers in here because they need to be your answers, but honestly, in a lot of ways, I've shown you how to do the assignment. And so hopefully this helps for those of you. Stay warm. Good luck on this assignment. Please have it done by Friday so the learning that takes place is going to help you on your quiz. On your test. If you don't do the work, you can't expect to learn from it. And then your test, you can't expect to have a good grade on your test. So please find time to get this done.